Hello everybody and welcome. We are so close to the set 7 release. It is now Sunday. Set comes out on Friday. Look forward to lots of awesome set 7 content from me. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you are too. And in today's stream, we're looking at more decks. We're doing more deck building, but we're going to try and focus in particular on the meta decks. That includes Ruby Sapphire. You guys don't see me build Ruby Sapphire, but we're going to build it. Thank you very much, Card Market, who sponsor my channel. I greatly appreciate you. We are heading on over to Dreamborn. Also worth mentioning, guys, if you want access to all of my deck lists in one place, I'm posting all of my latest deck lists on my Discord supporters group, which you can get access to if you're a YouTube member, which I need to make sure that bit works. Twitch subscribers, that definitely works. And Metafy groups supporters. Also, if you guys want coaching, the Metafy groups, it's basically like a Patreon. It also offers like personalized deck support and gameplay support where we can talk about Lorcana through DMs. If you're interested in that sort of thing and you want to support me more, that's the right place to do it. So thanks Metafy, thanks Card Market, and today's stream is sponsored by AFK Journey, which we're going to be playing for an hour and a half later on Twitch. Hope everyone's good. So maybe we start off with Ruby Sapphire. You guys know me, I'm not, much of a Ruby Sapphire guy. I like to do my own thing usually, and my own thing usually doesn't involve playing Ruby Sapphire, but at some point I've got to build Ruby Sapphire because it's what the people want. So let's take a look at the set 7 cards, because Ruby Sapphire was the best deck in the previous format, and Amber Steel. So let's start with those two. Let's do an Amber Steel deck and let's do a Ruby Sapphire deck. What did Ruby Sapphire get? Well, they got Belle. I doubt she's going to be the most meta version of Ruby Sapphire. I think she's a fun thing to try. I would be surprised, though, if she ends up. Maybe she will, but she's not going to be the first card you put in. There's also Lyle. I'm not really sure Lyle is a Ruby Sapphire card, necessarily. I'm not really sure what Lyle is. Maybe Amber Ruby? Probably Amber Ruby, actually. I could see him in Amber Ruby. You play Lantern, so you can ramp a bit. You maybe play, like, Gaston. He could maybe work in Amber Ruby, but that's about it. The Goofy doesn't rush. Whenever this character challenges another character, it's a no from me. Again, maybe Amber Ruby. Out of Order is quite an interesting card, but the last thing any gamer wants to see. Hey, what is up, Baked Goods? It's certainly not the morning over here. It's 8:30 PM. It's a late start for me today, but there we go. But yeah, Out of Order is not going to make it. In at 6 is where things start getting a bit more spicy. I think Beast is particularly bad. Baloo is particularly bad, one of the worst legendaries. But of course, the new Tamatoa, which also has this wonderful enchanted, is just brilliant. I think this Tamatoa is just... I was a bit low on it when I did the overall set review. Like, I wasn't low on it. I still put it as one of the highest, but I put Scrooge McDuck higher, and that was probably an oversight. I think Scrooge McDuck maybe one day will be stronger, but... The thing with Tamatoa is just plug and play. You can just make it work immediately. Obviously, it's particularly good with Lucky Diamond expensive items. The biggest thing really about Tamatoa is the 8-cost Tamatoa. For example, I play in Sapphire Emerald, and the only real reason I play it in Sapphire Emerald is for that one Porpsicle it gets back when you play it. Not really the questing power. It's just that it can give you a Porpsicle and then maybe another one after a turn, right? Which gives you that extra target for Hiram, lets you cycle your deck. So for the Tamatoa, like just being able to come down maybe on turn 4, if you've ramped a couple of times, which you can definitely do, right? And turn 3 you're at 4 ink. There's nothing stopping you going like How Far I'll Go Hardcast, for example. Maybe you shift Baymax if you're playing Sapphire Emerald, and then you sing How Far I'll Go. Maybe you just hardcast How Far I'll Go, or maybe you sing One Jump Ahead. Usually it's going to be turn 5. You can get to Tamatoa, but it is possible to get it to turn 4. Fishbone Quill gets you Tamatoa on turn 4 as well. What are you actually looking... Like, how many items are you realistically going to have in your discard at that point? Probably 1 max from a Hiram Flavisham. So, while this card is really good, I'm not sure it's quite as good as people think it is. Not sure it's quite as good as people think it is. Well, I actually, funnily enough, have Bell and Beast already. We were supposed to do some starter deck games yesterday against Earlmeister, but I actually have a few of the set 7 cards already, and it's such a waste, mate. I've not played with them at all. But you can see there's actually a new foil effect for set 7 cards. See how the text has got some foil? I'm really gutted I didn't get to play with these. I took them with me to Germany, but I wasn't allowed to play with them like in public, which really limited my opportunity to record with them, unfortunately. So I haven't done anything with them, which feels really bad. The other thing I was supposed to play against yesterday, but my PC is broken and it was just a disaster trying to get set up. So I think the Tamatoa is good, but honestly, I don't think it's as good as people think it is, to be honest. But I do think it's very good. But it's like, are you going to play Lucky Dime in Ruby Sapphire? I mean, maybe in like a more greedy. It's important to note that the best version of Ruby Sapphire in the last set was more of an aggro style of Ruby Sapphire in a way. It played B prep, but it didn't probably play a lot of Sisus. Maybe it played one. Didn't play ice blocks, these kinds of things. It played super goofs and pirates' lives and half sharks, right? This card's bad, this card's bad, this Baymax is bad. All is found. I don't think you're ever going to play in this deck. It's really an amber sapphire card, this seems to me, or like some sort of like ink gazer deck. Now, this is where things do get a little bit more interesting. Ratagan, I'm not sure is necessarily a Ruby Sapphire card. I am quite interested in trying to build Ruby Amethyst with this guy. And maybe we'll actually even do that today. Whenever you play an action while this character is exerted, gain 1 law. Like, very good for a complete burn deck, but not really Ruby Sapphire. Scrooge McDuck is great, but again, you need to really invest in a lot of items. And obviously you could go for a very heavy item build with Bell, and maybe that could work. And maybe we could even build that, right? I'm just not necessarily sure it's the best way to go. We don't want to force the deck in one direction right to begin with, right? We just want to actually build the best version of Ruby Sapphire. And just starting off with a card like Bell or starting off with a card like Scrooge, it's forcing it a bit too much. This card, on the other hand, is just very good. Whenever this character quests, chosen character of yours gains rush and resist 1 this turn. The biggest problem with Beagle Boys, really, is it's like, what do you want to rush with? Well, one thing you might want to rush with is that 6-cost Tamatoa, maybe, for some board presence. The other big problem is, like, do you actually want a quest in Ruby Sapphire on turn 3? Not really. You probably want to sing How Far I'll Go, or you probably want to challenge. Not really sure Beagle Boys is that good. So far, I don't think this deck... I mean, it definitely got some serious things, but I think it's being massively overestimated by the community, as people like to do before a set is released, about just how many insane things this deck got. So far, I don't think it got that much. Don't get me wrong, it got some stuff with big potential. I think Scrooge has huge potential, and I think the Tamatoa in particular has huge potential, but it already had a lot of good cards, right? That's the important thing to remember. 3 is an awkward number, really, for Ruby and Sapphire, for any Sapphire deck, really. Now, obviously, there's Maurice's Workshop. When this item is banished, you may return an item card with cost 2 or less from your discard to your hand. So, I do think it's an interesting dynamic to try and build an all-out item build for Ruby Sapphire. Obviously, you've got cards like the Queen, you've got Fishbone Quills, Hiram Flavershams, Bell, Beast. There's all sorts of cool stuff you could do with an all-out item build. And of course, you've got this Bell as well. But this is really... We built a deck already with this card yesterday, or the day before, Sapphire Steel. It's in the Discord. If it's not already, it should be. But I'll definitely post that after the stream if it's not already. We built that on yesterday's stream. I think I put it in there. Hey, Tekka. Yeah, we're going to get to Sapphire Coil. Again, Bell, you're going to put it in if you go for a heavy item route. I'm just not necessarily sure that's the way. Then in at 2, none of the characters catch the eye in any way, shape, or form. But then we obviously come to the biggest talking point, and it's Sapphire Coil. There was a tweet. I kind of hate using Twitter. I think I'm going to deactivate my Twitter account soon. As you can see, there's a lot of politics. What I'm kind of interested in. Considering this set isn't even out yet, I don't really want to doom and gloom too much, but I do not see a world where Sapphire Coil can exist in its current state. Ruby Red Blue, it really is a tier 0 and nothing is remotely close to its power level. PS several hundred games tested already. Now, RB's a great player. Let me tell you, I've played 0 games. But let me tell you, this is also the man, respectfully, who, when Ink Gazer was announced, he said he didn't want to play Disney Lorcana anymore. Right? Like, let's just be fair. Like, this man does like his Hyperbole. I'm just pointing it out. I think my time here is over. Discarded my hand was one thing. Yeah, it was annoying, but you could dig out of it. But I'm not going to play another game with this kind of resource denial. I've played Magic the Gathering formats where land destruction was not a type, and I won't do it again. And this card is, I just don't think, going to be good. I mean, it might be. It might be. So, like, what I'm saying is, I'm bringing up R&B's tweet because he is someone that's worth listening to because he's a very good player. But I'm also saying, like, oh my God, relax. I've got no games played. Okay. On the set. I'm waiting until the set is released. I actually am of the opinion that the reveal season ended too soon. I don't really know why we had all the cards available 2 weeks before the set comes out. Because really what that just encourages is it just encourages people to proxy stuff and practice. Meanwhile, I'm sat here trying to be a good boy and wait for the flipping cards to actually be in my hands. And it feels like I'm now behind as a result. I don't like that at all. To be honest, I mean, it's inevitable that they need to be released like a bit before, but it was like 2.5 weeks and we had every single card in the set. I don't think that's the right move. It should be like a week. I guess the concern is that people are going to get product and then stuff will get leaked, but 2.5 weeks seems like a lot. Maybe it's just me. So Sapphire Coil, listen, it's clearly a great card. However, if you actually look at the best version of Ruby Sapphire last set, it was 4 items with Porpsicles and 3 Hirams. Yeah, so the thing about this card is if you're playing the Sapphire Coil, you're probably, investing into it quite a bit. You might even just only play a couple, maybe, you could argue. But it's like, okay, when do you actually play the Sapphire Coil? I have to say, hot take, bear in mind, this is the man who, when Diablo was released, I said it was like the most overrated card. What I will also say is that was set 4. We're now in set 7. I've been doing Lorcana as my full-time job for a year now. At that point, I've been doing it for, 2.5 months. I'm a bit more experienced. I still think Diablo was overrated in a sense, but I underestimated some elements of it. I think Hidden Cove, in particular, is what I underestimated with old Diablo. And Bucky. I definitely did underestimate Diablo, though. But, I digress. I think, here's my take. I think Sapphire Coil is the most overrated card in Disney Lorcana history prior to release. Hot take. Clip it. Clip it, guys. Who's clipped it? Did anybody clip it? I think it's the most overrated card in Disney Lorcana history prior to a release. I could be wrong. Now, let me be clear. Me saying that I think it's the most overrated card in Disney Lorcana history prior to release. Overrated does not equal bad. I think this is a very strong card. I think it's a great card. I think it's an insanely powerful card. I just don't think it's anywhere near as good as people think it is because it's going to be so easy to beat. I have no games tested. R&B is out here. It's like, bear in mind, like when I'm saying it's the most overrated card, this is the level that people are talking about this card, right? Like, it's easy to say if I say something's overrated, right? Like, bear in mind this is the rhetoric that we're at, that it needs to be banned. It's tier 0 and nothing's even close. Here's the thing. What's going to win a mirror matchup? A Ruby Sapphire control deck that invests heavily on Sapphire Coil, or a Ruby Sapphire deck with Super Goofs and Pirate Slives and McDuck Manners. What's going to win the mirror? Well, it's quite obvious. It's going to be the McDuck Manor deck with the Super Goofs and all this, right? And you might say, well, Space, you could play a little bit of both. Okay, sure, but this doesn't fit the theme of Dinkham Fam's deck at all, right? The whole idea of Dinkham Fam's deck was it was just things which replace themselves, like how Faro goes, Sail, which obviously both ramp as well, ramp with Tipo, things that replace themselves like Vision and Develop. And then it was lore gain. It was Half Shark to get back the stuff, Pirate's Life, Super Goof, McDuck Manor, and it was B preps to clear the board, right? So Sapphire Coil in a mirror matchup, it's not totally useless, but it's a 2-cost item for Flavisham to banish and draw, right? So that's one way you could beat someone that's playing a Sapphire Coil Ruby Sapphire deck, is to play a more aggressive version of Ruby Sapphire. Alright. How else can you beat this? Well, you could play aggro decks, because this is very slow. Like, how do you get Sapphire Coil down? Like, at what point in your curve are you playing this card without sacrificing massive tempo? Ice Block is the most obvious comparison, but I can play an Ice Block on turn 1. Guess what you're doing on turn 2? You're ramping. You're not playing Sapphire Coil. What are you doing on turn 3? You're at 4 ink. Are you going to play a Sapphire Coil, or are you going to play a Grammatala, or a Hiram Flavisham, or maybe even a Super Goof? Or hardcast How Far I'll Go? Or double... I mean, what you could say, and maybe the right time to play the Sapphire Coil, is actually on turn 3, and you go Sail or Tipo and Sapphire Coil. Maybe that's the line, right? That's probably the best time to get the Sapphire Coil out. So rather than playing on turn 3 a Grammatala, you go for that extra ramp of a Sail or a Tipo plus the Sapphire Coil. But then all you've got on your board is a Sapphire Coil and a Tipo, and maybe a Porpsicle. That's going to be pretty easy to overwhelm. And then what happens if your opponent plays Benja onto your Sapphire Coil? Because Benja's great. I've already put Benja into my aggressive steel decks. Benja's an incredible card. I love Benja. I played it at my only DLC. So that's the big question. It's when do you actually get it down? So turn 3 is the most obvious, but you would have to sacrifice Tala. So I think going first, Sapphire Coil on 3, you might be able to pull off, right? You might be able to go Tipo and Coil, or Sail and Coil. Well, the reason that I mean, anyone saying that literally Ice Block is better or literally it's not better, this is obviously not super helpful discussion, because Sapphire Coil and Ice Block are the cards which have the most comparison, but they operate in different ways. Personally, I prefer Ice Block. But that's with an asterisk, because obviously Sapphire Coil is a more powerful card. The key difference is that it costs twice as much. Sapphire Coil is an incredibly strong card, though. The other thing to bear in mind with Sapphire Coil is that in order for it to activate, you need to continue to ink. And at some point, you don't really want to continue to ink. You need an abundance of card draw to pull this off. How Far I'll Go is great with Sapphire Coil, for example. But I think it's very overrated. I really, really do. I think a Ruby Sapphire deck playing Sapphire Coil should be getting beaten by anyone who knows how to build a deck for the metagame. Right? If you're building a deck for the metagame that loses to a Ruby Sapphire deck, which is that slow, why are you playing that deck, frankly? And you could say, okay, well, Spacey, that doesn't mean it's not tier 1. Fine. Like, it could be a great deck, but it's clearly going to be very strong, but it clearly has very big weaknesses, right? It has a big weakness to Pete, for example. You could say, well, Sapphire Coil is great with Sisu. Sure, to an extent. I think this card's really overrated. I really, really do. Now, someone mentioned earlier that it might be better in... It was Animuzul. Said it might be better in Emerald Sapphire. Well, I have to say, I think even in Emerald Sapphire, it's really hard to justify including. Compared to Ice Block, it's like, when do you get this down? I think the reality of Sapphire Coil, in my mind, where it might end up, is that it might end up in all-out item decks with big item synergy. I think if you've got big item synergy and you can cheat this card out, for example, with a card like Queen, maybe Oswald, I don't know. Scrooge McDuck can tutor it. In those kinds of decks, this card is absolutely absurdly good. It's brilliant. And let's not forget an item build of Ruby Sapphire won a decent Lorcana challenge in, I want to say it was Borkham. For me, this card's massively overhyped. I don't think that the best version of Ruby Sapphire will play this card. It might play like a copy, but I actually think it will play 0. Yo, what's up, Dinkam fam? Dinkam fam, I'm very interested in thinking what you think about Sapphire Coil. Obviously, you're the Ruby Sapphire maestro these days. And I'm not sure how long you've been here for, but I basically just been saying, right, like if you build your Ruby Sapphire deck with Sapphire Coil, and you come up against a version similar to yours from set 6 with Goofies and McDuck Manners, you would have to favour the person playing the McDuck Manners and the Super Goofs and all that sort of stuff, right? So that's one way that the Sapphire Coil would lose. And equally, if you're an aggro deck, you're going to have a much, or resembling aggro deck, you can have a much better time against someone playing a deck like Sapphire Coil compared to someone playing Super Goofs. Right? Like, actually, the Super Goof in that deck, I think in particular, is so good against the Amethyst stuff. Sapphire Coil is not crazy. Control Mirror gets unplayable. Well, we're just talking about R&B's tweet. And my hot take, which I'm ready for chat to have clipped. Best late game? Yeah, it makes sense. It's best late game. But like Ruby Sapphire is already good late game. And arguably, what you actually need to do to make Ruby Sapphire a better deck is give it better early game. Which, for example, Super Goof does really well. And so does A Pirate's Life as well. Super Goof gives you that challenge on turn 3, being able to take out something like a China Box Followers, and even the threat of Super Goof helps. Even something like the threat of Super Goof helps against those Amethyst decks, which tend to be the most aggressive on average, because suddenly if I'm playing against Ruby Sapphire, I have to think, oh god, I need to pop my China Box Followers. Whereas previously, I could leave those boys down for a much, much longer time. Watch me win set 7 tournaments with my mobile. We heard it there first, guys. Dinkam fam, not too interested in the Sapphire Coil. And I, for one, am not too surprised to hear that. I think it's a good card. And I do think it's a strong card. And I think it will find its way into the meta. But I'm not convinced that the best version of Ruby Sapphire will play this. I do think there's something to be said though for like an all-out item deck, item synergies, and I think in a deck like that, like imagine you could get this out with Oswald. Then we're cooking. So far there's not a single Ruby Sapphire card, which I think makes the deck that much better personally. Shock. I bet you didn't expect that. I do think the most interesting version of Ruby Sapphire to look at, therefore, because if I look at like Dinkam Fam's deck, I mean, it's this card which you could consider, but I'm not even sure you want to play a Lucky Diamond in that deck. I don't think you would play that in Dinkam Fam deck. He plays like 4 items. And we talked about this one, but again, do you really want to be questing with a 4 like on turn 3 as Ruby Sapphire, or do you want to be... I mean, in fairness, you're questing and giving something rush. Right? So what you could argue is the Beagle Boys gives you like a Maui 5-drop without playing Maui, right? Like instead of playing a Maui, you could play like a Donald Duck flat-footed and have a rush like that. But you could also just play Maui. Ruby red-blue item would definitely be played. Interesting. Or maybe we'll take a look at the Ruby Sapphire item setup. I was just saying as well, like I still don't have any games played on set 7. R&B's come through with this hot take. I'm going to retweet it. I thought about doing it before. No, I'm not going to retweet it. I don't know. Someone just clip it. So, I don't even know if I want to build Ruby Sapphire right now. Maybe I do. Let's build it. Like, let's build an item version of Ruby Sapphire. So the first question is just like, what is an item version of Ruby Sapphire actually doing? Obviously, you're going to play a lot of items. That's obvious. You're going to play Hiram. That's pretty obvious. But what else do you do? Well, the biggest cards which come to mind with potential would be Oswald. During your turn, whenever a card is put into your inkwell, you may reveal the top card of your deck. If it's an item card, you may play that item for free, and it enters play exerted. I mean, that sounds pretty damn strong. Oswald seems like a pretty good card in an all-out item deck. Obviously, the Sapphire Coil, probably the other one that stands out potentially. I'm not sure. You've also got cards like Scuttle, maybe. Scuttle's not that impressive. You guys will know I've never been a big fan of Scuttle. And then, of course, another big card you've got is the Queen. Look at the top 4 cards of his deck. I honestly don't want to build this deck, guys. I'm going to be honest. We had our red-blue discussion. I'm a bit of a red-blue hater, as you guys know. And I don't really know what I'm doing with this item build. I don't think it's going to look that good. I don't think it's going to take us ages. There's actually other decks I'm more interested in building. But I am interested in item decks at some point. But there was I'll talk about red-blue and why I think it's overrated. Let's build a deck I am pretty interested in, which is Amber Emerald Aggro, which is enabled by, in my opinion, one of the best cards of the set. It's just in a unorthodox ink color combination. When you play this character, you may return up to 2 character cards with cost 2 or less from your discard to your hand. That is very strong, guys. 2 cards into your hand. That sounds pretty tasty. Why is that so tasty? Well, suddenly, even in a color combination which potentially lacks card draw, obviously you could play Diablo, you are suddenly able to keep inking and get to 6 and maybe even 7 quite easily. Obviously Clarabelle could make some sense. So previously when you've played a Amber Emerald deck, it's been focused on discard, but with a card like Lady, you might be more inclined to try potentially to build something a little bit more speedy. I actually tested Amber Emerald, the aggro, quite heavily before Seattle. Well, I didn't really test much heavily, but it was one of the decks I did test more than most. I have to say, I think this card's absolutely absurd. I still think this might be one of the most underestimated cards in Disney Lorcana. I really like this card. I'm actually interested. I'm playing a set 6 tournament in a couple of weeks. I'm probably just going to drop and play in the set 7 side event. But I'm quite interested even in just playing Pegasus in Amber Emerald for set 6. I think it's very underrated. Can sing Bruno, can sing Under the Sea, and it gives everything evasive. I think it's a very good card. Being able to sing Bruno and turn your Prince John evasive on turn 3 is kind of no joke. Let's look at the set 7 cards that Amber Emerald got outside of Lady first, right? Because I think the Lady card is very, very good. But did it get that much else? Clarabelle obviously could work as well. A big question is like, how quick are you supposed to go exactly? This Daisy Duck will be too expensive. So there's this Tramp card. I'm not convinced this card's incredible. It's definitely not bad. For each character you have in play, you pay 1 ink less to play this character. When you play this character, you may draw a card for each other character you have in play, then choose and discard that many cards. I have to say, one thing I'm kind of interested in doing with this deck is just making it a Rockstar Stitch deck. I really like Rockstar Stitch. I feel like the more cards we get, the better Rockstar Stitch has to become. And I mean, already when you're playing Lady, Morph is of interest potentially, right? I wouldn't say it's a great shift. You kind of just want to play this on 5. So Tramp's okay. Perdita is a great card, by the way. Lantern is a great card, by the way. I still think Lantern... If I had to say what is the most underrated card in Disney Lorcana, I would probably say this. But, having said that, we're also going into potentially a Benja meta. Potentially a Benja meta. I love this card, though. I think it's particularly good with Amethyst, I have to say. Because of the abundance of good 1-drops in Amethyst. But let's look at the other new cards. Obviously, like, one thing that's coming to mind if you're playing Lady, it's probably going to be relatively speedy. So you're probably looking at playing, for example, like Daisy Ducks and this kind of thing. And Clarabelle. Daisy Duck plus Clarabelle just seems to have a lot of synergy together. The 6 costs are very bad. I don't like any of those. The new ones. In at 5, we already have Lady. There's quite a few 5s. There's the Return of Hercules. This card I also think is one of the better cards of the set. I really do like this card. We'll build Amber Steel as well. Whenever one of your characters sings a song, this character can't be challenged until the start of your next turn. Not sure it's necessarily the deck for it. We also did build a Madrigal theme deck already. But I kind of also just want to build like an Amber Amethyst non-theme deck. Again, I think Lantern is just great. This card's really good. I'm not sure it's necessarily the deck for it. Could shift Simba? You certainly could. It's very true. Pride Lands could be a card as well that you consider. Shere Khan is quite interesting. When you play this character, discard your hand. If you want to go definitely in aggro mode, it's great. I think Snow White is a fascinating card. I have to say, I quite like Snow White. She is expensive. She's not going to be good against like the greedy red blues. But you could argue that maybe you're just beating the greedy red blues anyway. Right? I think Snow White's good. I don't know necessarily that she'll be in this deck, but I think she's a card that we'll definitely consider. Same with Shere Khan. In at 3, Peg I don't like at all. You don't quest of her, she draws. Aurora, you have to imagine is not going to be the right card for this deck. Same with Mariano. Perla, evasive and support. Coda quest for 3, mate. Coda's kind of cracked. I do like cards which quest for a lot, as you guys know. None of the rest is that good. Parcher's not bad. While you have more cards in your hand than each opponent, which you probably won't. This character gets +1. And I think Anastasia's not a bad card either, but probably not for this deck. Steel exists. Hey, Pascal. Yeah, but the thing is with Cinderella that I think is easy to miss is okay. Oh, also this card. We didn't even touch on this. I meant Snow White, but I said Cinderella. When you play this character, you may put an item card named the Glass Slipper from your discard on the bottom of your deck to gain 3 lore. I mean, this card could pop off, but probably not. But maybe. This card, like, imagine you use like Strike a Good Match to discard the Slipper, and then you just play Cinderella and just gain 3 lore. And the Muses is a card, by the way, mate. Like, oh my god, the Muses. Like, honestly, whenever you're building a green deck, you kind of have to consider, do you want to play the Muses? Because that is a great card. The thing with Steel against Snow White, right? It's like they have a finite amount of removal. They can't just have an indefinite amount of removal. Preston, we actually talked a lot about Sapphire Coil. Maybe I'll even just make a whole video about it. Because if you want to rewind, we talked about it for a good 10-15. I think it's the most overrated card in Disney Lorcana history before a set's released. But the thing with Snow White is like, okay, Steel can remove it, but then if they're removing Snow White, they're not removing your other stuff, right? It's not like they just have infinite removal forever. I mean, you could say, yeah, they do, but they literally don't, right? But maybe they do. Mini's a funny card with Rockstar. I think I just want to build a Rockstar Stitch deck, honestly. Kind of just down for Rockstar Stitch. Like, I want to build decks which I want to play on day 1. I don't necessarily also just want to build like the most broken meta that's no fun decks. I mean, I kind of do, but I kind of don't. I kind of want to find a mix. So, if we were hypothetically to go down the rabbit hole of Rockstar Stitch, bear with me here. I think Perdita, by the way, seems really good with Lady. Like, it just helps you get to that extra ink. 6 is a really nice threshold to get to. Hypothetically speaking, let's say we wanted to play Rockstar Stitch. 4 shift is expensive. What is the best way to play Rockstar Stitch? And it is without doubt Pride Lands. This card, honestly, we shouldn't even lock in green immediately. We should not lock in green. Pride Lands, guys, is the best way to, play Rockstar Stitch. Why? Because your 1-cost characters cost 0. It comes back to one of my first ever Disney Lorcana videos, which was a Rockstar Stitch deck, Infinite Loop, where you could literally play like 40 1-drops in one turn. And I never actually played that deck in person, so I want to do it. Now, the important part of Pride Lands, and by the way, this card exists now, which it didn't in the past. The important part of Pride Lands is that you need a Prince or King here. So, if you think about the curve, let's say you play Pride Lands on turn 2, and then on turn 3, you already, so this doesn't actually help you get your Rockstar Stitch down earlier, right? Because the earliest you can play Pride Lands is on turn 2, and maybe, someone mentioned Pluto, maybe Pluto is what could change that, right? But let's say you play Pride Lands on turn 2, then on turn, and you played a Stitch on turn 1, let's say. Then on turn 3, you still can't shift your thingy, right? You could play a Prince that costs 2, but then you wouldn't have enough ink to move it in. So you really need a Prince which costs 1, or a King. Prince or Kings which cost 1 are a very precious commodity in this game. It's really important for Pride Lands. So, what Prince or Kings cost 1? Because you can also play Pluto, by the way, which does enable you to shift Stitch earlier. Obviously, like an advantage of Emerald, if we actually look at the Stitch cards, I think there might be an Emerald Stitch that's cheap. There's this guy, the 2-cost Stitch. There's also this 2-cost Stitch. There's also Morph, of course. So that's like a big advantage of Emerald. But another advantage of Emerald is that they actually have a Prince that costs 1. And it's Flynn Rider. Doesn't seem like a very impressive card. But it doesn't matter. Now, there is a more impressive card in Steel, actually. Which is a Prince or King. And it's this Simba. When you play this character, you may draw a card and then choose and discard a card. Obviously, there's also some synergy there with Lilo, potentially. Now, it's also worth mentioning that this Prince/King is more easy to remove than Flynn. So, even though this card is better than Flynn, kind of, especially if you're playing the Simba, which readies, this is a better shift target. Like, the Flynn Rider is more difficult to remove, and that is actually very important. So, it's Simba or Flynn. I think they're the only ones in the game that cost 1. Oh, there's King Candy as well. Wow. And there's now this Simba. So technically, you could also play a blue. That's interesting. You could also play a blue Rockstar Stitch deck. That's not something I'd ever considered before with Pride Lands. Kind of interesting. So we've got 3 options. I think we can agree it's not going to be this Simba. This is the worst of the bunch. I mean, it could be though, right? We've got options. So really, if we're building a Rockstar Stitch deck, because that's where actually our focus is now shifted, we'll go back to looking at Amber Emerald. I want to build a Rockstar Stitch deck. I think it's time. There's some cool stuff happening. So if we actually just look at the Amber cards, right? Let's look at the Stitch cards to begin with in Amber. Stitch. There's this Stitch. And there's this Stitch. So we'd have 2 shift targets. The other things which are interesting are Pluto and potentially Lantern. Not sure about Lantern, but Pluto definitely. Yeah, Zero to Hero is also an interesting line. I think it's trying too much though. So Gaston doesn't help you get to Stitch, though. Right? You just want to shift Stitch. We're just going to look at all the amber cards. So the thing with Lantern, I don't think it makes it, but I think Pluto's going to be in there ×4. It's really, really good in this deck. So the other big thing you want is you want lots of good 2-drops, right? Specifically characters. And there is something new. There is something actually new. Bro. How does that not work? There is actually something new in this set, which comes to mind. So, like, Trusty you don't care about. Troubadour you don't care about. Candlehead you don't care about. Penny's not bad if you go Amber Steel. When you play this character, you may remove up to 2 damage from chosen character. Their game resist 1. I've seen worse cards. The Prince is pretty interesting. A 0/5 bodyguard. It is uninkable, but that's kind of interesting. Lilo is good, especially with the Simba. This is the new one I was talking about, though. When you play a character, this character gets +1 law this turn. Oh! Bro, with the Pride Lands combo, this Minnie Mouse can quest 420. Now, you could say it's win more. But if you're playing a Rockstar Stitch deck, like, we're going to test it, right? We're going to play some amount of minis. Maybe 4's too many, but like 2 or 3. It's hard to say no. Obviously, it's also hard to say no to Lilo's, right? Lilo's a very good card. And then really what you want to start looking at is the 1-drops. You want to look at the cards which quest for 2. You want to look at the shift targets, and you want to look at the 1-drops. During your opponent's turns, you can't lose law. It's not a huge deal. It's not bad. There's also Piglet, which can, of course, quest for 3. There's Wendy, who's kind of a bit power cramped at this point. Simba as a bodyguard. And then in terms of the 1-drops, you've got Lilo, you've got Daisy, you've got Pluto. You probably wouldn't touch anything else, would you? I mean, you could, if you're going, you know, for the Pride Lands stuff to infinitely loop. Still a turn 4 Stitch with Gaston. That's true, but it doesn't have quite the same level of explosiveness. I think you can get turn 3 Stitch with this setup as well, right? You go Pride Lands on 2. No, I guess you can't. I think it is still a turn 4. Which is slow, I'm not going to lie, it's very slow. So then the question is just like, what do you actually want to pair this with? Right? And it's never Amethyst because of the Pride Land stuff. The thing that's important about Prince and Kings is it's particularly the 1 costs. The 1 cost Princes and Kings are really actually impactful. I mean, let's just take a look at the 1 costs in Sapphire. I'm pretty sure they just have worse card quality. I think like it's cool now that there is a card you can play. Okay, it's Emerald Sapphire only. I was like, wait a second, could that be good? Alright, I think we can agree it's not going to be Sapphire, and it's not going to be Sapphire. It was worth checking out. It's not going to be Ruby. I'm fairly certain of that. So we can just focus on, is it Steel or is it Emerald? And the reality is you could just probably build 1 for each, and they'll both be pretty similar. Historically, I always preferred Emerald. But there's also this Mulan now. There's also Mickey. Mickey's very good. There's no other card which quests for 2 in Steel, whereas Emerald has Merfolk. And then in it too, you've got the most interesting maybe. You could play Penny. Penny would fit the deck. Mr. Arrow. You could even play Doc. Smee, of course. I still think it's Emerald. I have to say, I still think it's Emerald, right? I think Emerald just has better card quality. Like, flipping Pegasus. You do want a ton of wands in this deck, right? That's kind of the idea of it. Is it is a bit of a meme, and you just want so many wand drops. You want like all the daisies, all the lilos. It's really the wands which make the deck ridiculous. I would wager you probably want to play Pegasus too, right? And then you could play like the Shift Pegasus. So then the 2 costs, you've got another Stitch, which you could play if you so desire. You've got Morph. You could play Go-Go to close out the game. I know we're going way over here. You've got Ursula to try and counter B-Prep. It is interesting. I have to say, I think I prefer this. I mean, of course you could play Diablo, but I don't think you're going to play enough actions for that to be a thing. I mean, I think the other thing is if you build this Amber Steel, you're like, well, why are you just not playing a different deck, right? So then the question becomes with Emerald Amber, it's like, do you actually, like, how much of a meme do you make this? So now we know that, let's actually just try and build the best. I think I'm a bit lost at the moment. It's like, okay, do we build a Rockstar Stitch deck or do we build the best version? Let's just build, for now, a Rockstar Stitch Amber Emerald deck. Let's start there. Like, what can often happen when you're building decks is you just get a little bit overwhelmed with the ideas and suddenly you're cutting cards, and I always like working in reverse order. So I want to build an Amber Emerald Rockstar Stitch deck, which will be a bit of a meme, fun deck, but it's going to pop off. I want Minnie Mouse to be able to quest for like 20. You know what I mean? Yeah, I want to build a burn deck, actually. Maybe after this we'll build burn. It's hard to say no to Go-Go, isn't it? I have to say. Good way to close the game out, potentially. So, I think it's always Flynn Rider and Pride Lands. It's always going to be this Stitch. It's always going to be the cards which quest and cost 1. So, Lilo, Merfolk, Daisy. You need to play Pluto as well. Already the uninkable count is at 16. And we want to put Pride Lands in the deck and Mini. I mean, the thing is, we really don't need much ink. So this deck probably can play an absurd amount of uninkables, but maybe we're overdoing it slightly. Just ever so slightly, right? The thing is with Pride Lands is it's really a 1 cost that you care about. The Pluto is needed, I have to say. There's also this guy, the Prince. The Prince, mate. I kind of already hate the way I'm building this deck. I don't know if I want to do this right now. Let's build the best Amber Emerald deck. I'm getting too overwhelmed, guys. I want to build the best deck. And ladies in that deck. This card's great. Really, really good. It could still be a Rockstar Stitch deck, guys. Let's just relax for a moment, though. 3-drop Gaston, I have to say, is an interesting shout. It's probably quite an underrated card, right? Just in general. My gut feeling would be that this deck also plays Clarabelle. And Daisy Duck. I think there's some nice synergy there between Daisy and Clarabelle. Something like this just seems quite a reasonable start for a deck. Obviously, you could look at Morph already. I don't think the ladies and tramps are that good. I don't like this card really at all. I don't think you really want to shift this lady either. You kind of just want to play her. I don't think I like the tramp either. If you have a character... Yeah, I don't like this card at all. I think it's bad. Sadly. I don't like the lady and tramp cards apart from lady. And then the big tramp... Maybe. The big tramp, maybe. This one might be good enough. So if you have 3 characters down, this costs 4. Are you happy to play 4 for this? I mean, it is a good ability. You could discard Lilos, right? I'm not super convinced. It's not like good enough to go in the deck already. You know what I mean? So what else did they get that's new? Not really any of that. There's also, we can't forget about the muses. Snow White. I think this Baymax card's very strong. I like this card a lot. Yeah, it's possible you could do some song stuff. Like the muses is great. Strike a good match with the glass slipper. Honestly sounds tasty. This card's also very strong, right? Draw a card, chosen character gains bodyguard until the start of your next turn. Like with the muses, that's kind of insane, right? That is a really strong card with the muses. I have to say the muses is a great, great card. The concern maybe with the muses is like if you don't have discard. I don't even know if I want to build this deck, guys. I kind of want to build a burn deck. I know I'm being a bit indecisive, but we're still exploring stuff. I'm just chilling. Sorry, I'm a bit all over the place, but this is how it often is. So I want to build a burn deck. It's probably a Ruby Amethyst deck, right? We also are still... I'm still not really sure what to call these decks. I'm not really sure burn is Lorcana friendly. So, what did a burn deck actually get this set? Well... And you could argue that Dinkham Fam's Ruby Sapphire is a burn deck, by the way. It got this card at 2. It got This Is My Family, which is an insanely good card, by the way. Draw a card and gain a law. This is a great card. Very, very strong. Very great card. I like it a lot. A lot. It also potentially got Ratigan, although I'm a bit unconvinced. What you could do with a card like Ratigan, though, is you could play It Calls Me, which is like a 1-cost action. Like lots of cheap actions. Bam, bam, bam. Maybe there's even like some sort of red-green. Yeah, you just don't have the actions that cost 1, right? I mean, you could with Improvise, I guess. Burn, I think, comes from like Magic. And it's like this idea of like gaining lore without questing necessarily. Like you might play B preps and stall out the game and win with things like Pirate's Life. It's basically gaining lore without questing, without board control. I mean, one thing to always consider in this style of deck is Robin Hood as well, right? Robin Hood is one of the best burn cards in theory because he is, I mean, you guys know me, I love this card. But Robin Hood is able to quest and do stuff, but I don't think he's the way. I'm actually very unsure what decks I want to build, guys. I'm a bit lost. Do I even want to build a burn deck? What do I actually want to build? I want to build something which is good. Oh, okay. I know how you build a burn deck. What are the best cards in the game? Diablo, check. Churner Boy, check. Magic Broom. You play all of these. You know what else you play? You play Snake. You know what else you play? You play Goat. You know what else you play? That's right, Madam Mims. Or Merlins. You play Rabbits. What else do you play? You play Madam Mims. Boop, 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 boop. Alright. So you play all of that. It's all the purple stuff. Already played blue-green. Built blue-green. And you've got now This Is My Family to the mix. The other stuff that you could do in a burn deck is play like the Amethyst Chromicon. There's also this new card, draw 3 cards. I think Amethyst Chromicon is a better version of that. It's obviously gathering knowledge and wisdom as well. Now, we don't necessarily have to pair it with red. Been interested through Staff and Muses? Yes. I don't know if I love the Staff. I think it's a bit slow. But I do think you could go down that route. Red tends to make the most sense because of A Pirate's Life, because of Maui Half Shark. Be prepared. Even Flynn Rider, right? Kind of fits the theme. There's also this card, and there's the White Rose now as well. When you play this character, if an opponent has an exotic character and play game 1 lore, the puppy deck will be fun, but... What do you think reasoning behind Ravensburger not giving us a schedule for this year's competitive scene? I think it's just not been organised properly. Like, I think something went wrong a bit with Worlds. They said they're hiring more people, right? Yeah, it's not great. I have to say, I'm not very happy about it. But it's their first year of doing things. We're given the benefit of the doubt. I think it's better that it's done really well than it's done badly. You know, I think it's better that it's done really well delayed than rushed and bad. You know, but yeah, I'm certainly not happy about it. I want to go to events and stuff. All those Mims and Merlins are sorcerers for the new draw spell. Isn't the draw spell old? Wasn't it like a set old already? Mate, I want to build a Sven deck. Okay, I just realized what I want to do. I want to build more decks around the dual color cards. Like, that's kind of where I'm at. I want to play Sven. I think this card's really good, guys. All right, so we're building Blurple. I think what I actually want to do is build decks around the dual color cards. I'm really up for the dual color cards. All right, so we play. I saw Sven and I was like, okay, yeah, this is what I want to do. This is exactly what I want to do. I never played Blurple last set, and I will definitely build it differently to how everybody else played it, because people don't play Diablos and Brooms and China Boys, and I never get it. I just don't get it. They're the best cards in the game. They really are. Just play all of them all the time, every time. Where's the Diablo? I mean, the Diablo is probably the worst of the bunch, but still. One Drop Merlin's a cool card. Let's take a look. Whenever this character quests, name a card, then reveal the top card of your deck. If it's the name card, put it into your ink first. Well, I'm not going to play this card. It's a meme. It is fun, though. We could build a deck around this, but I just want to build a Sven deck. I think this card's really good. I've been on record saying this is one of the most underrated. So obviously on 2, what do you want to do? You want to ramp. Sail, check. Tipo, check. What happens if you miss ramp? You go triple 1-drop. Happy days. I very much doubt you want to play anything that costs 3, potentially just Friends, or I guess you still play Fox, and I guess you probably still play Snake. There's also Alice, to be fair, but you definitely still play Fox. Fox is just a broken card that you just play 100% of the time, all the time. And I would imagine you also are going to be playing the Snake, right? There's also Mama Odie. This is a card that does exist. Lots of other streamers hate that card. I don't think it's bad, but hey, they're the pros. I mean, listen, people have lots of bad takes. I think it's really good, but I also have some bad takes. I think this card's great. I really like this card, man. I really do. I think it's very strong. But it doesn't quest for much. And obviously it competes for a slot with Elsa, but that's fine. It's also interesting that I really like Sven, but I don't like crabs that much. I mean, I do like crabs. I get their need, but Sven just speaks to me, man. So Genie, probably 4. Genie is probably better in this deck than any other deck, because you can consistently play it on 3. You're also going to be on 4 Elsas. I could definitely see a world this deck's supposed to play Queen's Castles. Sven kind of suits the Queen's Castle with Vibrate. You're going to play some amount of rabbits. I'm not sure how many. So in at 5, Elsa is a must. I guess you play Snake as well, by the way. I mean, do you play Snake? Do you even play rabbits? Snake's good, but I don't know that it's that good. Pleakley's a good card as well on Tipo and on Diablo. Oh! Pleakley really is quite good at 3. Doesn't quest for that much, though. Like, how do you close out a game with Blurple, mate? I have played Ruby Amethyst. I got... What tournament did I play it in? I can't remember. I played it at Axion tournament in the UK. I got like... yeah, I lost my top 8 game. I was top seed after Swiss. It was the biggest tournament in the UK at the time. I played Ruby Amethyst for the first time ever. I was top seed after Swiss, but then I lost my top 8 game to Play Nation, who's often in the chat. I didn't really play much variety of the last set. I didn't play much in the early set, really. I had a bit of a break from content. And then later on in the set, I kind of just like doing my thing. With the new Donald. I just think you need... Yeah, I mean, the big Elsa, I think you play some amount of. I just think you kind of need some fast questing power. This is a good card, by the way. Not for this deck, but that is a good card. It just looks a wee bit slow to me. You need some big questing power. Whenever this character quests, you may exert chosen character. If you do, that is not very good, is it? Doesn't need to be uninkable. I think like just making an inkable Elsa shift would have been more interesting. Ursula's probably not doing too much. Like, how do you finish the game as Blurple quickly? Amatoa. Like, what's the win con against Red-Blue? Is it just Maleficence? Because I don't hate the sounds of playing Maleficence and Snakes and Foxes. Like, how else are you going to beat Red-Blue? Are you going to play Lucky Dime? Probably you're not going to play Lucky Dime, right? So how the hell do you beat... I quite like this card in this deck as well, by the way. Alice. White Rose Goat. Yeah, Goat is a fair point. There is also the new card, isn't there? Maybe we could play that in this deck. That seems very good in this deck, actually, I have to say. This is my family. It's kind of a perfect fit, right? You have an abundance of ink. It gains you a lore. I think you need to be quite quick with Blurple, though. Like, you can't... I just don't like the concept of playing a deck which doesn't beat Ruby Sapphire. Like, if you look at Blurple, right, it should win the Amethyst Mirrors because you ramp consistently. And you Genie Elsa before they can do much. Should be fine, right? So you should be beating Amethyst decks without really much effort. Also, I think Sven's very good in an Amethyst Mirror. So then the question is, how do you beat Ruby Sapphire and how do you beat the songs? I mean, I think there's going to be some amount of the big Elsa, right? Maybe like 2. Maybe 3. I kind of don't want to put that many in because I think I only own 1, which was the one I got the other day from the packs. I'm going to have less top end than most people because I'm playing all of the 1-drops. All of the 1-drops are going to draw me more cards in the late game. And also, like, This Is My Family, I think, is a great addition. We're at 12 uninkables, which isn't a ton. Emerald Steel sounds like a cool deck to cook up. So what's the other dual link cards? Is it like this big Elsa? That's such a random card. That is such a lame dual ink color card. Isn't it? Isn't this really lame? Why? What is this? I don't like that, man. It's such a waste of a cool dual link color card. Why is it uninkable? Why is it uninkable? That is like, okay, if this wasn't dual link, I could see it being uninkable, but it's dual link. This does not need to be uninkable. This just makes it completely useless. Very sad card. Very, very, very sad card. That is honestly very, very, very strange. I don't really get the design of that one. Most cards I get the design of. This dual ink should mean it is inkable. I don't get that. Being dual link is such a big downside, so how is this card uninkable? It's literally never going to see play ever. Right? Right? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's going to be some massive Anna Elsa wombo combo deck, but I don't even think it's that good even if you hit. Like, how is... what? I guess you could argue, okay, well, it's a budget version of this. Maybe that's the logic. It's like, oh, you don't have the set 1 Elsa, well, you can play this. What else could we add? I mean, there is also this Elsa. Let's look at the other set 7 cards. If there's anything we're forgetting about. Donald Duck. I mean, if ever there was a deck to just play 1 Donald. I'm not doing it, guys. I'm sorry. We don't want Tammy T. Medusa's too slow. 5 already has a bunch of competition. 4. Oh, Anna. Support. When you play this character, chosen opposing character can't ready at the start of the next turn. It's not great. It is not great, guys. Kind of sad. Blurple could have done with some more juice. I do think the flipping Sven is a belter, though. But I'm a bit disappointed about the other dual link color cards. Very disappointed, actually. This card's quite interesting, isn't it? Magical Maneuvers. So the deck didn't get a ton of juice, I have to say. One drop Blurple Merlin. I mean, honestly, we will build a deck around this card at some point. It is a spicy card. So what's our curve looking like? We have ramp, check. Turn 4, check. Turn 5, check. Kind of missing some 6+ cards, right? Is this card good? Is this the way that you beat or do you play like some locations like Queen's Castle maybe? I think Queen's Castle's kind of a great card. Queen's Castle's kind of like a late game card. I think with Sven it makes sense as well, right? We also don't have the snake in the deck yet, which I think you want. I could just see it being like Snake and Queen's Castle, honestly. Queen's Castle has to be very underrated. Also, there's Vision of the Future. It's a pretty good card. I'm not really sure you want it for this deck, but I think I might just put Snake in the deck and Queen's Castles. I think Queen's Castle might be a banger. But yeah, I think also the Hades might be worth a look. So if I wanted to hypothetically put in a couple of Hades, what would we drop? Go down to 3 castles maybe. And four Svens probably is a lot, but whatever. Like, it's obviously the card I want to test the most. Yeah, we talked about it already. Look, it's a completely outrageous take. I've literally got 0 games played, and I completely and utterly don't believe this for a second. I have 0 games played. So, we talked about it earlier in the stream, though. Now you always play 4 brooms, I think. I mean, interesting that the Diablo in this deck isn't that impressive because there's no crabs. No crabs is also controversial, but we have Sven for trades. But maybe Diablo is not all that, honestly. Missing a 1-drop in this deck would feel really bad, though, you know? I think this take is pretty outrageous. I honestly don't believe this for a second. I think this is a really bad take. I haven't touched the game. I haven't played the game. I'm saving myself. Sven is the moose. I know he's a reindeer. Is he a reindeer or a moose? I think he might be a moose. He's a reindeer. Alright, he's a moose now, guys. The deck does not lie. Alright, we're going to build one more deck and then we're going to move on to the sponsored segment of the stream, which is AFK Journey, because otherwise I'm never going to get to bed in time. What other deck should we build today, guys? Green Steel. What do I want to build? I want to build something. I don't want to build John Silver. I don't massively care for the Yzma. I certainly don't care for, but maybe the Kronk puppy deck. We built Purple Steel already. Twitch subs, guys. Check my Discord. The Discord, there's a private channel. I want to get it popping off. Twitch subs, Metafy supporters. All the decks we built already are in the Discord. We could build the puppy deck. It's not going to be very good though, is it? We didn't build the Hey Hey deck yet either. We didn't build the burn deck either. There's not that many cards. I'm really excited for Jafar, by the way. I think Jafar decks might bang next set. I think they've got real legs. I'm not that convinced by this card, by the way. I don't know if it's that good. I think I want to build... We already built Ruby Steel. We could build a deck with this, but I'm not really sure I want to do that yet. I really am excited for the Jafar decks. I know this is that interesting. This card's great, by the way. I really do like this card. I mean, Cobra's good in purple steel dock. Don't get me wrong, I've got it in my list. But the cards that you're removing from purple steel dock are also good. That's why I don't think it's actually that insane. Yeah, Amber Emerald Lady we were taking a look at before, and we could go back to that. I think we might go back to that. Yeah, let's do that. Because we did start down that avenue. Because I think Lady is a really, really insane card. We kind of got distracted by looking at Rockstar Stitch. So, you play Lady. Did your stream from yesterday got taken down? I was watching it earlier and I can't find it. Oh, Josh, I'm sorry. I actually privated it just before I started today's stream. Maybe privating it wasn't the move, but it had a title and a thumbnail relating to starter decks, which I never played. And I was kind of in a rush to start the stream and I ended up privating it. Was that a bad move? I decided to private it rather than change the thumbnail and title because I just wanted to go live and I didn't want to... I realized that I probably should have done it last night. Sorry. Let's go, Ducky. Oh, that's awesome. Looking forward to that. So, I do think the Muses is an insane card. This has potential to me as well. This does have potential. With Strike a Good Match. Use Strike a Good Match on the Glass Slipper. Bam! Play this game 3 lore. That is some synergy. Jafar might be the first deck I play of the set, actually. I am very excited for it. I have to say, we could also build Amber Steel. I'm also very intrigued by this. I'm very interested in this card. In general. But it's like, okay, we're building Amber Emerald. Like, what is always going to be in the deck no matter what we do? What is that, like, literally the next best card after Lady? Because that is a very, very, very difficult question to answer. And therefore, maybe it's just looking at curve. But that's also difficult. It's like, okay, you're either going to play Pegasus, Diablo, Daisy, Merfolk. Rapunzel? Not necessarily, right? Because Rapunzel isn't in the previous meta versions. Piglet? I mean, maybe. I wouldn't say it's a definite. You know, like what is the actual definites, the non-negotiables? Go-Go? Go-Go, you... Maybe? I don't know it's even Go-Go necessarily. Lilo? Probably? But again, I'm not like 100% sure that that's without doubt always going to be in the deck. There's definitely different avenues. Morph? Probably? Clarabelle? Probably, but what if you want to play the Muses? Lantern? Sudden Chill? Like, nothing here just seems to me like, oh my god, I have to play it 100% of the time. You know what I mean? Which is very interesting. Not often that happens. The Lady, yeah. I guess like you could say, well, you need to make sure the Lady is actually good, and therefore you need a lot of characters which cost 2 or less. So I guess that's a fair starting point, is that we actually need to put in a lot of characters which cost 2 or less in order for Lady to actually be good. That's probably a fair argument. But are there any other cards in Amber Emeralds that are going to be in the deck 100% of the time, and I'm not sure that there are. I have to say I like the muses a lot. Painting the Roses red, oh baby. Great card. Very, very strong. For me, the card which comes to mind most out of all of these cards, which I think I might want to... Oh, this card's good. Cricky. Mufasa. Pegasus. I do like a bit of Pegasus. This is a card which excites me. There's just nothing that jumps out, is there? Until you get to 6. And then I think my opinion changes a bit. Because I think this card's really strong. But I don't even know that it is that strong. Clarabelle comes to mind. I guess this card is good for Enabling Lady. And it's good with Chernobog. I hadn't actually thought about the Chernobog synergy, right? I actually hadn't thought about the... I actually hadn't thought about that. Kida Under the Sea. Kida Under the Sea is strong. But can you play Kida Under the Sea without discard? Maybe. So, this card's interesting with Chernobog. And it does set up the lady. Problems to solve are how to fight the board when on the draw. Yeah, that's probably fair. Enable slippers. Oof. So for each character you have in play, you pay... So let's say you have 3 characters, it costs you 4. Not bad, is it? Are you happy to play this for 4? I mean, honestly, not really that happy, but I guess you kind of are for the cycle. This is a weird old deck. I think you need... like these kinds of cards which gain lore when you've lost the board, and you need cards. It's a weird old deck. Lantern is a great card. Am I wanting to play lanterns in this deck? People have also mentioned Gaston earlier being an option. I can honestly see Gaston working. I can honestly see Gaston working. Cricky's a good card. A very good card. I don't know about this deck. I'm going to go to the loo real quick. 1 sec. It's hard to build these decks, but that's a good sign. I like that. Alright, so for me, it's just a Rockstar Stitch deck, guys, isn't it? Like, don't know that this deck is going to be that good. So why not just give Rockstar Stitch a try? Rockstar Stitch is the forgotten man of Disney Lorcana. Do you remember when everyone actually thought this card was great? Spoiler alert, it never was, but people thought it was. It can't be bad forever, right? It can't be bad forever. So I think that you could do some cool stuff. I think realistically, the Muses is a great card. I really, really do. But I think without discard, and without Diablo, I'm not sure you're gonna have that much joy. And I think if you go discard Diablo, I don't think you even play Lady, right? Be honest. So yeah, let's just build a Rockstar Stitch deck, because that is a lot of fun. So Rockstar Stitch, welcome. Now the big question with Rockstar Stitch is, do you actually go for the Pride Land stuff, and how much of a meme do you go, or do you just have him in there as an option? Because obviously you can play Morph. I don't think we want to overdo it. Obviously you could play Morph. And I think what we'll also do is we'll play Pegasus. And we'll also just play the 1-cost Pegasus, right? That's just a very good start for a deck. Guys, Red Blue Coil is not going to be that good. It's not even the best Red Blue deck, in my opinion. I don't think you got that much to worry about. Don't get me wrong, it's going to be good, but it shouldn't be that hard to build a deck to beat it. Like, if you're playing a deck which loses to that, why are you playing the deck? That's kind of my mentality. Which is maybe not the most fair mentality, but it is kind of my mentality. Now, Tramp's interesting. Obviously, Chernobog could be considered. Tramp is interesting as well, because if we're going to try and go very wide with this deck. I mean, if we're playing Rockstar Stitch, it's probably fair to assume we're going to play the 1-drop Stitch, but the 1-drop Stitch is kind of bad. I'm not going to lie. Can 2-drop trigger Rockstar when it comes in exerted? Yeah, it can, I think. And if you play a character with cost 2 less, you may exert them, draw a card. Maybe not. No, I guess not then. No, it can't. Because if you go bodyguard, if you bodyguard Simba, you can't technically exert it. You have to put it in ready and then exert it, technically. Well, that will be the strongest. I think it's going to be a pretty open meta. I think what do I think got much better? I think Amber Steel might be the best deck. Amber Steel and Red Blue will still be two of the best decks, but they already were. What decks do I think caught up the most? I definitely think that Sapphire Emerald got a lot better. I don't think it's going to be one of the best though. I think it's going to be close. I guess like the question is like, what aggro cards are better now? I think purple decks. I think this is a pretty big deal for purple decks. This is my family card. I think it's a really good card. Blue Steel got a lot better. Very true. There's all sorts of cool stuff. I think it's going to be a really fun meta. I'm not really sure about this deck though. Rockstar Stitch. I think if I'm bothering to play Rockstar Stitch, I kind of just want to build it in a fun way. You know what I mean? Which is the Pride Lands deck, which we kind of started building earlier, and then I was like, oh, I don't know about this, but let's just do it. Pride Lands. We need to be really careful about the uninkable count. So we need the Flynn Rider 1. We're going to need Stitch. Stitch 1. So Stitch, Pegasus, Flynn, Morph, Pride Lands, Lady. Like, we're trying to build the Rockstar Stitch deck into an actual real deck. Do we play Tramp? Probably, right? For each, you probably just play 4 of these as well. I guess you play a Chernobog. I actually have an enchanted Chernobog, Pog. But the other thing is with cards like Chernabog, even cards like Lady being uninkable, it does kind of detract a little bit from the theme of the deck. Pegasus? I don't know. I think I'm going to move on to the sponsored segment of the stream, guys, to be honest. And we'll build some more decks over the week. I'm going to probably start working on some more videos for Lorcana rather than streams. Like best decks to play, that sort of stuff. Gameplay is going to be starting from, I think you can expect to see a gameplay stream of sorts on Friday. Got a cool stream happening. More details coming soon. But definitely look out for a cool thing happening on release day. What else? And then pack openings. But yeah, don't even think you want Shift Pegasus. So good. The Shift Pegasus turn everything evasive. Absolutely insane. But yeah, I kind of feel like the way to play the Pride Lands Stitch deck is just go full in, embrace the meme. And just play a ton of 1-drops. I will say the Tramp as a tutor is also interesting though, because you can actually, like, I remember like a problem I encountered when I played this deck previously was not being able to find Stitch. I think you need to play Pluto in this deck as well, right? Pluto can let you get Stitch down sooner often. So I do think Pluto is necessary. Let's just finish this list off. We want to try and avoid too many uninkables. So what are the inkable 1-drops that are actually good? Fred, maybe. You kind of have to play the new mini as well, right? It would be a bit outrageous not to. But again, we need to be careful with the uninkables. I think you want Lilo. Probs. So you have like some stuff after a B prep. The Baymax is also great. It's really the 1-drops you want though for the unlimited play. But yeah, 17 uninkables is already a lot. Thanks, Josh. I appreciate it. I will do that. You're right. I'll just change the thumbnail for it. And the title. I'll try and do that tomorrow morning. Thanks, mate. Yeah, Rockstar Stitch. I mean, I think the Chernabog is fun, and it can obviously pop off, but I think also it might... I think that the uninkable cards in this deck might give you more issues than they save you. I think that the Lady will still be worth it. Pluto, Stitch. You could argue we maybe want like an extra king or prince. Are there any other cheap ones? There's no cheap kings. Any other cheap princes? There is the prince. There is 1/4 Simba. There is also this Simba. And there's also the bodyguard Simba. I mean, this card's kind of cracked, right? It's possible that the Rockstar Stitch deck is actually better with steel, and you play the 1-drop Simba instead of the Flynn Rider, right? The 1-drop Simba is pretty... I actually have a feeling it might be better with steel. So if I was to cut the Flynn, cut the Morph, cut the Pegasus, do I really care about any of this? Not really. They're all kind of the worst cards of the deck, right? To be honest. So then we can put Simba in, maybe. Obviously, we put the 1-cost Simba in. Mulan is absolutely incredible, by the way. Such a good card. The Mickey's pretty good. Honestly, the inkable 1-drops in this deck, quite a bit better. Happy's not even that bad. Could play Daisy because she quests for 2. Can probably get away with actually playing her now. The uninkable count. We can play Penny. Maybe even play like another Simba. Do we have enough Stitches? Stitch and Stitch. We need the other Stitch. Because we don't have Morph anymore. You could play Doc. Smee. Can't go wrong with Smee, can you? I mean, does it look like a massive pile? Yes, but it's supposed to. You actually want a few more 1-drops, honestly. Could play Hey Hey for the hell of it. Yeah, I think this deck might be better with steel. I don't think you gain a whole bunch. I don't know if either are that great, really. I guess like the thing that is better about the green version is you can. I think the green version is more exciting because you can play. I don't even know if you play Lady, but you know what I think you do play? I think you play the I think you play the Tramp. Because it's tutoring your Stitch more than anything, right? Like I remember because I played this deck in the past. One thing that really is painful is when you run out of you just don't draw your Rockstar Stitch. This seems like the way you would build the Bolt Simba deck. What does Bolt do again? Because maybe if Bolt's actually synergizing, we could. Whenever you ready this character, gain 1 all for each other undamaged character. That's true. That is true. I think I'm going to end it there. We've got some ideas for the Stitch deck, but I'm going to ponder on it more. We're going to move on over to the sponsor segment of the stream. So YouTube, we are going to end the stream there. Thank you very much for hanging out. Give the stream a like if you enjoyed it. If you want to come and watch us, we're going to be hanging out for another hour and a half playing AFK Journey, who sponsor the Twitch stream. So come hang out over on Twitch. Over here, if you want to come hang out. It's a fun game. Thank you, guys. All right, Twitchers. Let's switch category and load up the game.